on, TV fans? Welcome back. Today we got another Guest Geek segment with Rachel Mcleod. Yeah, it's like Highlander. It's epic. It's amazing. Today we are reviewing The Last King of Scotland, directed by Kevin Macdonald, starring James McAvoy as Nicholas Garrison and Forrest Whitaker, and an Oscar-winning role as Idi Amin. This is about the story of a doctor from Scotland who basically he's sick of being in Scotland. His dad's kind of overbearing. He's also a doctor. He doesn't really want to work with him anymore. So he decides, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else in the world. And eventually, where does he end up? He ends up in Uganda right after Idi Amin takes over the country. Eventually, somehow or another, they become friends, and he somehow becomes an advisor. And at first, he's like, hey, this guy's cool.
Right.
I'm down with this. This is great. And he's like, no, he's not so cool. He's actually this mass murderer, and he's a horrible person. Rachel, why did you want to do this?
I wanted to do this movie because we basically touched upon some of the, in my previous guest spot here, we've talked about some whitewashing issues, but we also talked about the stereotyping of Africans in film. And we name dropped this movie along with Hotel Rwanda. So naturally I want to at least review Last King of Scotland because it's also a great film. I happen to actually like the film for many reasons. I also hate the film for other reasons, but we'll get into that later, maybe another segment. In any event, I do like this film for the story, for the engagement, and for the dynamics between the relationship between Dr. Garrigan and Idi Amin. And that's, I guess, where I'm going to go with my main gist of this review, is really looking at the dynamics of this relationship that's in this film that I think is done extremely well.
That's what's important to me in the film. It's the relationship between Idi Amin's doctor and Idi Amin. Forrest Whitaker's performance is brilliant throughout. Yes. He's constantly unnerved. You don't know what he's going to do at any moment. Like, he's legitimately scary person. I see him and I go, imagine being around him. Like, what would you do there?
Right.
Like, imagine being in this doctor's situation where at first he thinks, I got the greatest gig in the world. Right. And then he's trapped.
Right. And I think maybe what I want to do is maybe step back just a tiny bit and just maybe further explain why I picked this movie. In the previous guest segment that I had, we were talking about the stereotype of the African warlord. Well, it's interesting. Forrest Whitaker's performance of Idi Amin is nailed dead on. And the stereotypes are stemming from Idi Amin. Idi Amin is the benchmark from which all other dictators seem to be judged and marketed. No, I'm being serious.
No, it's true, I agree.
Because like every warlord that comes up to it seems to be a caricature of Idi Amin. He's the definition of warlord. So anything that comes across as a warlord is going to be benchmarked to or in comparison to Forrest Whitaker's performance of Idi Amin. Idi Amin is like the benchmark of the warlord.
I mean, you see all the stereotyped tropes in Idi Amin. I mean, you can actually watch old footage of him, and he's this big boisterous guy. He's wearing all these medals. He's always got guys with guns, with machine guns around him at all times.
Right.
You know, he's kind of at times he's laughing kind of sociopathically, and other times he's like crazy. I mean, you can just watch the footage of him.
Right.
You know, he's a real life warlord, mass murderer, a dictator.
Right. Now, the reason why I love this film and why I think it's so seemingly different and not a stereotype is because Forrest Whitaker's performance adds something to Idi Amin. There's some nuances. He doesn't just come off straight up as a crazy psychopathic so and so on. He works up to it.
No.
It's all very subtle. And maybe the first scene where you might get a little hint of something is actually when Dr. Garrigan actually comes across Idi Amin. When Idi Amin first calls him to help him with like a car accident. There's a car accident scene.
He hurt his hand.
Right, he hurts his hand, and there's a scene where, hey, you, come here, help me with my hand. And as he's going through this process, there's a bull or a cattle or whatever have you mowing
broke a leg. So
right,
there's a cow nearby, broke a leg, and it's in agony, and it's just mooing and making lots of noise.
Right, and David Carradine says, well, somebody please put that animal out of its misery, shoot it. And from that moment on, you're seeing a little bit of a play-on-play of power dynamics between Idi Amin and Dr. Garrigan, at least from my perspective. But what's interesting is that from that point on,
because Dr. Garrigan eventually takes Idi Amin's gun, who he put aside because it was a shooting hand.
Right.
He put it down. He grabs his gun and he goes and kills the cow. And people are shocked that you grabbed the president's gun. You can't do that.
Right.
What?
But within 30 seconds later, it's something that Idi Amin admires in Dr. Garrigan.
Yes.
There's a little bit of unpredictability with Idi Amin, but also with Dr. Garrigan. And they play off each other's unpredictability. And I think that adds a whole other element.
I didn't think about that element, but you're absolutely correct. I remember shortly after that incident, he brings the doctor to the Capitol, And he's like, hey, come work with me. And the doctor's like, well, I can't really do that. And then eventually he starts talking about this woman. He's like, oh, is there a woman? Oh, is she unmarried? Is she a married woman?
Right.
And they're all kind of having like a good old boy laugh about it. And like they're both party guys.
Right.
They show
it's a boys' club.
partier.
It becomes a boys' club.
Yeah, and it's interesting, that dynamic. You're right. They do have some similarities. I mean, they get along. What Idi Amin's not being a crazy sociopath. Yeah, they get along all right. That's why he actually went in the first place. Like, this guy seems like a good guy because he is very charismatic.
Right.
They show that throughout the film, that when he wants to, like in front of the press, he can put on a show.
Right. And maybe we have to step back even a little bit more.
Oh man, so much stepping back.
I know. Sorry, I apologize. But to really get the sense of the story, really we have to say that Dr. Kerrigan's story is basically like a fish out of water story. He's an adventurer. He seeks to make a difference in the world. He's obviously clearly wants to be a doctor. He has all the right intentions. He says, I'm going to go to Uganda and I'm going to make a difference. Well, here in this case, Idi Amin is giving him an opportunity that he can't refuse. He puts him up as the head of the national health system, whatever have you. And not only that, but a personal advisor, but that comes a bit later. There's a gradual process where he goes from being a simple doctor on a simple mission of working as, little missionary, whatever have you, to becoming the head of a national health system. Oh, and by the way, the head of security. Oh, by the way, personal advisor. But all these promotions that he gets come as a result of this relationship that becomes almost buddy-buddy to a point where now you've come too close. Now you're getting into the inner circle, and now you're getting to see more of Idi Amin than maybe you were prepared to see. Maybe at first you see him, oh, he's the people's hero. He's coming in with a liberating army. He's got trucks full of happy waving people. Hey, look at that. The army just liberated us, and we're free Uganda. Fantastic.
And
Idi
always
Amin.
lots of guys
Hooray!
with machine guns around. Always.
And then, later on, it's like, you've saved my life. You've fixed my arm. You helped me burp or fart, whatever it was. You helped me pass gas. I had indigestion. Oh, and now I trust you with my child. Now I trust you with my security. Now I trust you with this. And now I trust you with that. And it's like, what have I got myself into? I'm David Kerrigan. What have I got myself into? Or is his name David Kerrigan? Whatever, Dr. Kerrigan. I'm Dr. Kerrigan. I'm just in the
Nicholas Kerrigan.
Nicholas Kerrigan. Okay, fair enough.
I like the slow entrapment of Dr. Kerrigan.
Yes.
I think it's one of the most interesting parts because he really, right from the very beginning, that love interest he shows early in the movie, she's like, this guy's bad news.
Right.
And he's just completely blinded. He sees the fancy car. At one point, Idi Amin gives him a nice brand new car. And it isn't actually until that point, shortly after getting the car, we first sees the behind the curtain, the real Idi Amin. So he's driving Idi Amin in the car, and everything's like, oh, look at my new car.
Right.
I'm driving the president around.
Look who I am now.
Yeah, exactly. Look who I am now. Then suddenly, rebels attack.
Right.
And he actually has to drive Idi Amin to safety. He's almost killed himself. And then those rebels that try to attack him, they get captured. And now you see the real barbarity.
Right.
They get stripped down. They get they're tortured. That's it. This is how the regime works. He goes crazy. Idi Amin, where are my soldiers? Where's my security?
Right. From the get-go, I always got the impression that Dr. Kerrigan was living in a fantasy world. This is fantasy.
Definitely.
This is an adventure. And then at some point, reality is going to smack him in the face and say, the reality is, you've just lost sense of where you're really at. You're in Uganda. Think about how Idi Amin got to be where he is from a revolution.
He's so naive. It's almost to a caricature point. I find that he's so naive. It's like, really, you're a doctor. You're highly educated. You should have some idea that there's some problems here.
Right.
Like, he sees people with guns. Oh, are we all right? Like, did you do some research? I mean, really?
now the other tasty bit about this is like, there comes a point where, okay, now he's lavished and he's given these great powerful positions, and he nonchalantly is looking at all his replacements, or the people he's replacing, his predecessors. Oh, who's that? Oh, that was your predecessor. He was at the head of the hospital. Now it's your job. Well, where does he go? He gets executed, but you don't find that out, Or hey, who's that guy? Oh, he's been replaced.
Don't worry about that guy. It's nothing to be concerned about.
2 weeks later, he's executed in a warehouse somewhere, or he's thrown into a mass grave. He has no idea of what Idi Amin is doing. Now, the viewer, if we're in any way knowledgeable about Idi Amin, we know what's going on in the background. But the beauty of this movie is, it's not really about Idi Amin. It's really about Dr. Kerrigan being a fish out of water, being exposed to the subtleties and the trapments. And just as David Kerrigan gets, comfortable.
Nicholas Kerrigan.
It's just the doc.
This is a doctor. The Scottish guy.
We might have to edit this, but But as soon as the Doc gets cozy, and as soon as the Doc thinks that maybe he can use his power for good or maybe be influential, the power is snatched up because Idi Amin continually reminds him, hey, you're my tool.
Yes.
You're my tool. Never forget that.
I have a question about that power. Because he's put in charge of the medical sector or something.
Right.
I never actually see him doing anything there.
No.
Like, I never see him, like, talking to a bunch of other doctors. We're going to implement these new policies. Oh, we should do this. We should have this vaccine. I never see him actually do that. There's scenes of him, like, in the doctor's coat, checking people's heart and blood pressure. Right. But they never have him, like, being an administrator.
He's not doing any field work
either. Yeah, like, what are you doing?
He's not doing any doctor business. But the interesting thing about, well, where does his power go or come from? It's like, well, Idi Amin gives him the power, but what he does with it is actually he's kind of like politicking with other diplomats who are Brits.
Yeah.
Like, when there's a discussion about his passport or his status as a citizen anywhere, when shit hits the fan, it's like, I'm his personal advisor. I should have. No, you don't, because no. you think your clout will get you so far, but not really, because you're officially a nobody.
He just really seemed to me like Idi Amin's pet. As opposed to someone that really had much influence. There's a couple of decisions they show him making in the movie, but they're trivial. They're like, oh, decide what building we're to build.
Right.
That is a lot of power in some sense, but it's not the political power that you probably thought.
Right. He was a stand-in for a couple of occasions. But again, the Doc is thinking to himself, hey, I'm a personal advisor. I want to see just where this takes me. I want to see this adventure unfold.
It seems like a good idea at the time, but let's get beyond that. Let's get into the performances. This to me is the heart of the movie.
Right.
It's not so much the fish out of the water. The fish out of the water story is the movie is the thread that ties the movie together.
Right.
But to me, what the movie's really all about are the performances of particularly Forrest Whitaker.
Yes.
He won an Oscar for this. Did he deserve the Oscar?
Oh yes, solid. He nailed it. Because he added the nuances of unpredictability. He wasn't just a cardboard character or a character of a warlord. There was a soft side to him. There was an unpredictable side. He was a consummate liar. He played up all the characteristics.
He's very neurotic. Self-doubt, a lot of self-doubt they showed in the scenes where away from his men, but in front of his men he's hyper-confident.
Right. And there were certainly scenes where he was vulnerable too. So it wasn't just, okay, flat out, I'm a warlord. When he was like, crying and screaming for the doctor to come, to basically burp the guy because he had indigestion, that was vulnerability. That was sincere. And he had a sense of mortality. That was real.
The thing I was really impressed by, this was after the fact. I was stunned by the performance when I watched it, is I actually saw at least part of that Oscar speech.
Right.
And I'm like, this guy's like Daniel Day-Lewis. He can embody a character so much where you don't even recognize him anymore. You don't even recognize him as that person anymore. Like some actors, like I made fun of Tom Cruise a lot on this show. He's always plays the same guy usually, or Keanu Reeves, like the big example.
Right.
He's always the same.
Right. And he always has the same catchphrase.
He's not the same actor. This guy's a real actor, right? And Nicholas Garrigan's James McAvoy's character, he's a
fresh face.
He's at the time he's a fresh face. Now of course, is Professor X. Yeah. He's taking over Patrick Stewart's role. But before, this is the first time I had seen him, and he's an excellent actor, and he did a great job in this film. I feel slightly bad for him in some sense because. I think he's actually really good, but Forrest Whitaker is just wow. What's a lifetime?
Now the thing about the reason why I like Forrest Whitaker so much is because he's such a versatile actor. I know him maybe more from the short role he played in Platoon, a very soft-spoken soldier, infantryman in the movie Platoon, the Oliver Stone flick. And to see him go from being the soft, gentle giant, so to speak, in that particular film, now he's the big, loud, boisterous dictator. The head of Uganda.
That's acting.
And he's got some big shoes to fill, because again, we had expectations of what Idi Amin is supposed to be. And he says, well, either you can step up, or he's going to have to step back. He took the role. And I suppose any other African-American actor could have taken that role. I could have thought maybe James Earl Jones could have taken that role and played off, extremely well.
Probably too old at that point.
But Forrest Whitaker, however, he nails it.
What are some of your negatives of the film before you score it?
That's good. This is where I get into the editorial.
All these notes.
Yeah, my notes. The negative is that
we can do the historical thing at another time, but,
right.
touch on how this is so different.
I guess the negatives tie into the ending of the movie. Now, whether we see this movie as a historical fiction or not, the ending I think was a bit rushed and is also a bit much more heavy-handed with the Hollywood. Here we have a torture scene where the doc is being hung by meat hooks while a hostage crisis is going on outside. The bit more much for me. It's kind of
so much drama's happening. Much.
It's glossing over a real event, that a real historical event, where now the doc story, the torture scene is now. It's the main plot when it shouldn't be the main plot. It actually becomes a subplot to a much more important historical event in my view.
See,
there's some confusion in there.
I'm gonna interject here.
Yeah.
People on the show know that I'm a history guy. I'm trained to be an historian.
Same here.
I bitch a lot, right? So we got some history buffs here.
Yeah.
And I bitch a lot about historical accuracy when it doesn't serve the purpose of the movie. Like I bring up Elizabeth, starring Cate Blanchett, as the classic example of a movie that is complete nonsense historically. From the costumes, the music, from the actual timeline of events, from the characters, everything is nonsense. It's all stylized. It's inspired by, you could say, the Queen Elizabeth I. And I'm completely okay with it because they're all made for an artistic reason.
Right.
And like you have these long series of notes here, and I didn't know that the hostage crisis like you did. I didn't know all the details, and to me, they made the story because I guess this doctor character is basically fiction.
Oh yeah.
There's no actual Scottish doctor,
nope.
Right? But I don't care because it's
right.
It's a vehicle for telling an interesting story. Right. He's got, and I think you said it was inspired. They even use that terminology. Yeah. Just inspired. We're just using this as a basis, and then we're just gonna roll with it.
Right. And that was a challenge for me in doing this review, was that knowing that it was inspired by, to me, means this is going to be historical fiction. But I also got the sense that in order for me to really enjoy this film to its fullest, I kind of want to know the history. But
now you're saying that, but then you know the history, but now it feels like you actually enjoy it less.
I was prepared to make my statement. I love this film for all the wrong reasons. I hate this film for all the right reasons.
Okay.
Now the reason why I love this film is because it's still very much an engaging story. It's a great psychological study of how these two relationships play off each other. It's about a power struggle in a way because you're hitting this fresh-faced, naive doctor a hell of a lot more power than he deserves.
And he really screws it up too because eventually he hooks up with one of Idi Amin's wives, which is like the dumbest thing you can do.
And now he hooks her up, but gets her pregnant, then arranges an abortion, and then without any consequences until the torture scenes at the very end of the movie as a hostage crisis.
So what would you rate this? I use a 5-star system. You can use another system because we use all different kinds of systems here in Geeks the Movies.
5 works for me.
All right, 5 stars. 5 stars. What are you rating this bad boy?
I would give, as an engaging story, I'd give it a 5 because it's an engaging story. And it is a study on personalities. Now, if I'm reading it from the historical accuracy point of view, I'm going to slam this sucker. It's not even worth a 1. Because it really glossed over so much. There's so many nuances about this thing. Honestly, I would say that the true history behind this stuff is far more fascinating than the movie in itself. If I was looking at it as a history geek. As a history geek, you're going to hate this movie. But if you're just enjoying a wonderful psychological thriller, subtleties and personalities and chemistry, you're going to love it. That's why I'm kind of torn. I'm a little bit torn on this movie.
Well, you can give it 2 scores. I'll allow it.
If I did the average of the 2 scores, I'd probably bake
3 stars.
Maybe like a set.
That's at 5 and 1 star. I think you get 0 stars.
4.
That's your final score, 4 star?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still a great movie, though. I mean, it's an engaging movie. I was engaged. I was entertained, and it was different. And it's a wonderful performance by Forrest Whitaker.
I am going to give the movie 4 stars for different reasons. The history thing, to me, was all changed for a reason. I don't like when they change history arbitrarily. I hate it when there's like the director goes, oh yes, make some costumes. Oh, okay, the original costumes were red. We're just gonna make them blue for no reason. That I don't like. But when they change it because they're actually trying to serve the movie, that's fine. So to me, I understand. The history is probably fascinating. A little bit I know is interesting, but this is not what this is about. They just be inspired by it. Yeah. My problems with the movie are movie problems. I love Forrest Whitaker. I love James McAvoy. I love, those characters are great, and they're fantastic characters. I had a problem with the overall arc. Like, I felt it was rushed at the end. Yeah. Suddenly, everything goes to hell really fast. At times, there's some scenes that I'm like, can we just get back to Forrest Whitaker? I don't really care about this other stuff.
Did you feel like it was a slow build-up? Did you feel like there was a slow build-up early on? I
felt it was really slow, and then it kind of went shot that high gear too soon. Yeah, it should have been a better movement. Otherwise, but still, 4 stars is a great film. Go and see this film. Maybe we'll do another segment with Rachel. We'll come back and we'll talk more, do some editorializing. But for now, this has been Shane Goodrich. You are
Rachel McLeod.
And we've been Geeks of the Movies.
Boom!